I was faced with a choice which I never should have had.
She was crying like I had never heard a woman cry before in my life.
And I just cried for weeks and weeks. Everything reminded me of a baby.
And I kept trying to get up from the table and look to see what was in that jar.
I was dealing with the loss of my unborn child and I didn't even know it.
I believe that my life was spared that night just so that I could be here right now and say abortion hurts women.
Whisper, be silent no more.
Welcome to Faces of Abortion. I'm your host, Cindy Collins, and today we're going to be watching the second part of the documentary Life After Abortion. Today you're going to be hearing about the consequences of abortion, real-life testimonies of women who have been hurt from abortion. Now let's watch Life After Abortion.
When I walked out of that clinic and I walked down Santa Monica Boulevard, I knew I was a different person. I felt like there was something evil inside of me. I felt like I could do anything and there were really no boundaries anymore. I felt murderous. I felt unloving and uncompassionate.
I didn't realize that after I would have these complications and that I'd really be struggling emotionally. They didn't tell me any of that. I wish somebody had.
I began wearing a mask to hide the shame and guilt of what I had done. I began partying in nightclubs and drinking to the point of falling down drunk. I used illegal drugs, anything I could use to numb the pain that I was in.
So I went back to school, pretended like it didn't happen, but I started drinking and smoking some pot and trying to get rid of the pain that was just so deep.
I became very promiscuous. I started drinking more, taking drugs.
I immediately started to drink, use drugs.
I began to just live in the bars, drink heavily, do drugs, became very sexually active.
I started drinking, I started doing drugs, and I became very promiscuous.
In the year before starting to medical school, I worked at an abortion clinic, doing physical examinations and also family planning for the women who came there. My thought process was that I would instruct them on using birth control and would prevent the need for abortion in the future. What I found actually was that women were returning for repeat abortions. And my question was, had I not given them the proper instructions? Had I left something out of the instructions completely? It never occurred to me that it was not the instructions in family planning, but it was the behavior and repeat behavior that was causing the problem.
Over the next 4 years, I had 3 more abortions with acquaintances and guys from work. They weren't even serious relationships. I began to use abortion as a form of birth control.
I went through bouts of deep depression. Guilt haunted me. Shame followed me.
I began suffering from depression and panic attacks for which I had to take medication. I'd never had to take medications for anything like that before.
After my abortion, I was really depressed, and I sought help from some psychiatrists, and I got on antidepressants. The thing about it is I could tell them everything bad about me and everything I thought was wrong about the sexual abuse and other things, but I could not tell them about the abortion.
And I was drowning in this party atmosphere just to numb myself from the pain that I was feeling that I had taken the life of my own baby.
I knew deep inside of me that what I had done was take the life of my own child.
I felt empty and I would cry and I couldn't understand my feelings. This was my right to do this. All the feminists said is my body, my right. This was going to help me. Why didn't I feel that way?
As time went on, my heart got more and more empty, and I tried more and more things to try to fill it up. More drugs, more work, more accomplishment, another degree in school, increasingly dysfunctional relationships.
They said my life would get back to normal again. It's never been back to normal again.
The grief and trauma and shame that we as women deal with this choice, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy.
After my abortion, there were around 4 years that I tried to get on with my life, and that looked like overeating and undereating, drinking, promiscuity. I had nightmares. I became depressed. I felt anxious and shamed.
I can remember not being able to look at commercials about babies without crying. If we went to the mall and I saw a little baby, I would start crying. I remember feeling very guilty about not having my babies.
Every year, on that anniversary date of my abortion, I would go into a depression for about a 3-week period. Every time I heard the word abortion, I would break down in tears and just cry.
I just felt shame, I felt guilt. I would grieve, and I grieved for my 2 children that I wanted so desperately, and I know I could never have. I wanted to meet them. I wanted to see what they would have looked like, hear their voices. And I never gave them the chance to live. And I lived with this every single day.
I was haunted by reoccurring nightmares. And all I could see was mutilated babies' bodies. And I'd see mountains of them.
I have nightmares where I would save myself and let my first child just plunge to a raging river where I would save myself and let her die. And I remember her words, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy," until she was no more.
For 13 years, I tried to deny it. I tried to forget it. I tried to walk away from that horrible memory. But I couldn't. It followed me all the way through my life. It affected every area of my life. It affected me as a woman, as a mother, as a wife.
I was so numb inside and full of self-loathing, just deeply depressed, and it finally just get to a point where I no longer wanted to live. I felt I could no longer go on.
And there was times that I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't leave her alone because she was so scared. There was one night in particular, in the middle of the night, she woke up and she was just crying. And I looked in her face and I just saw terror. I just saw total agony in her face.
I began to have suicidal thoughts, and I made a suicide attempt.
I remember pouring a whole bottle of Valium in my hand and a whole bottle of Librium in my hand, and I don't know how many aspirin I poured in my hand because I just felt like everything was just completely out of control, and I can remember taking them all.
I was listening to depressing music. I was in a pit and I could not get out. I even tried to kill myself. I turned the gas on in the oven, and thank God a friend came to the door. I tried 2 other times to kill myself as well. My life was out of control.
My alcohol abuse was really strong, and then I would turn to cocaine so that I could feel something again, and then I would try to come down by drinking alcohol, and then I would want to feel something again, so I'd do some more cocaine, and it was such a vicious, vicious cycle, and it had a hold of my life, and I couldn't do anything about it. In fact, one night, I looked into my bathroom mirror and I stared straight into